The greatest secret is not that your mind can understand reality. The greatest secret is that your thoughts, beliefs, attention, emotions, and actions are quietly creating the reality you live every day. And the moment you take control of your mind instead of allowing your mind to control you, you stop living by accident and start designing a future that once seemed impossible. Your reality changes the moment your mind does. Most people believe they are seeing reality exactly as it exists. They trust their eyes, their ears, and their experiences. They assume that what they perceive is an objective picture of the world. But one of the most fascinating discoveries in modern neuroscience is that your brain is not simply observing reality. It is actively creating your experience of reality every single second. Think about that for a moment right now. Your eyes are not actually showing you reality directly. Your eyes are collecting information. Light enters through them and sends signals to the brain. Then the brain interprets those signals and constructs an image of the world around you. In other words, what you experience is not reality itself. It is your brain's interpretation of reality, and that changes everything. Because if the brain is responsible for interpreting reality, then the way you think, what you believe, and what you expect can dramatically influence the world you experience. Imagine two people walking through the exact same situation. One sees opportunity, the other sees danger. One sees possibility, the other sees limitation. The environment is identical. The reality they experience is completely different. Why? Because the mind is filtering information differently. The human brain processes an unbelievable amount of information every second, far more than you could consciously handle. To prevent overload, the brain filters most of it out. It decides what is important and what can be ignored. This filtering system is influenced by your beliefs, memories, emotions, expectations, and focus. In simple terms, your brain is constantly asking, what should I pay attention to? And whatever answer it chooses begins shaping your reality. If you believe the world is full of opportunities, your brain starts noticing opportunities. If you believe the world is against you, your brain starts noticing evidence that supports that belief. If you expect success, your mind searches for paths towards success. If you expect failure, your attention naturally gravitates toward obstacles. This does not mean the mind magically changes the external world. It means the mind changes what you notice, what you focus on, and how you interpret what happens around you. And that interpretation becomes your reality. This is why two people can live in the same city, work in the same industry, face similar challenges, and still experience completely different lives. Their minds are creating different experiences from the same environment. The modern scientific understanding of perception supports this idea. The brain is not a passive camera recording life. It is an active prediction machine. It constantly makes predictions about what it expects to see, and then interprets incoming information through those predictions. In many ways, you are not seeing reality first and forming beliefs afterward. Often, your beliefs influence what parts of reality you see in the first place. This is why changing your mindset can feel like changing your world. Nothing external may have changed immediately, but your perception has, and perception influences action. Action influences results. Results influence future beliefs, and a completely different life begins emerging from that cycle. This is also why some people remain trapped inside the same circumstances for years. They are not only repeating the same actions, they are repeating the same interpretations. They are seeing the world through the same mental filters. The moment those filters change, new possibilities become visible. Suddenly, opportunities that seemed invisible appear. Solutions emerge where problems once dominated. Confidence grows where doubt once lived, because the brain is now constructing a different experience of reality. The most powerful realization is that your mind is shaping far more of your daily experience than you realize. Every thought, every expectation, every belief acts like a lens through which you view the world. And while you may not control everything that happens to you, you have far more influence over how you perceive it than most people ever understand. And the moment you realize that your brain is not merely observing reality but constantly interpreting and shaping your experience of it is the moment you stop accepting your perceptions as absolute truth and begin consciously creating a more empowering reality through the way you choose to think, If your brain creates the lens through which you experience reality, then the next question becomes incredibly important. What controls that lens? The answer is attention. Attention is one of the most powerful forces in the human mind, yet most people underestimate its impact completely. They think attention is simply about concentration. They think it is about staying focused on a task. But attention is much more than that. Attention determines what becomes real in your experience. Every moment of every day, countless pieces of information surround you. Sounds, conversations, opportunities, challenges, ideas, emotions, possibilities, and distractions all exist at the same time.
Yet you do not experience all of them equally. Why?
Because your attention acts like a spotlight. Whatever falls inside that spotlight becomes vivid and important. Whatever remains outside it fades into the background, even if it is standing directly in front of you. Think about buying a new car. Before purchasing it, you barely noticed that model on the road. Then suddenly, after deciding to buy it, you start seeing it everywhere. Did thousands of those cars suddenly appear overnight? Of course not. They were always there. Your attention simply started noticing them. This simple example reveals something profound. The world around you often changes, less than your awareness of it, and this principle affects every area of life. When someone focuses constantly on problems, their brain becomes highly skilled at finding problems. When someone focuses constantly on opportunities, their brain becomes highly skilled at finding opportunities. When someone focuses on fear, they see threats. When someone focuses on growth, they see possibilities. The external environment may remain largely unchanged, but the internal spotlight shifts. And when the spotlight shifts, reality feels different. Science explains this through the brain's filtering systems. The mind cannot process everything at once, so it prioritizes information based on what appears important. Whatever receives repeated attention becomes marked as significant. In other words, your brain begins collecting evidence for whatever you consistently focus on. If you spend years focusing on reasons why life is unfair, your brain becomes an expert at finding proof. If you spend years focusing on ways to improve your situation, your brain begins identifying resources, opportunities, and solutions. This does not mean positive thinking magically changes reality. It means focused thinking changes what parts of reality become visible to you, and what becomes visible influences your decisions. Your decisions influence your actions, and your actions influence your future. That is why attention is so powerful. Many people believe their circumstances control their mindset, but often the reverse is true. Their mindset influences what they notice about their circumstances. This is why two people can face the exact same challenge and respond completely differently. One sees a dead end, the other sees a lesson. One sees proof that they should quit, the other sees proof that they should continue. The challenge is identical. The attention is different, and that difference changes everything. Modern life makes this especially important because countless forces are competing for your attention every second. Social media, notifications, advertisements, headlines, and endless distractions are all trying to direct your focus. The danger is that when you lose control of your attention, you gradually lose control of the direction of your mind. And when you lose control of your mind, you lose control of the reality you are creating for yourself. The most successful people understand this intuitively. They guard their attention carefully. They choose deliberately what they focus on. They understand that focus is not merely a mental skill. It is a life-shaping force, because where attention goes, energy follows, and where energy flows, results eventually grow. The opportunities you notice, the beliefs you strengthen, the habits you build, and the future you create are all influenced by what consistently occupies your focus. And the moment you realize that attention is not just observing your reality, but actively shaping it, you stop allowing the world to decide what deserves your focus and begin directing your mind toward the opportunities, possibilities, and future you truly want to create. As we begin to understand how attention shapes perception, we arrive at another extraordinary truth. If attention determines what we notice, then beliefs determine what we think is possible. And this may be one of the most powerful ways the mind bends reality, because beliefs are not just ideas you hold. Beliefs are instructions your brain follows most. People think their beliefs are simply opinions. They imagine beliefs sit quietly in the background of the mind without influencing much. But science suggests something very different. Beliefs act like an internal operating system. They shape expectations, influence decisions, filter information, and ultimately determine how a person interacts with the world. In many ways, your beliefs become invisible boundaries around your potential. Imagine a person who genuinely believes they are not capable of success. That belief may not be spoken aloud every day. It may not even be conscious, but it quietly affects every decision they make. When opportunities appear, they hesitate. When challenges arise, they doubt themselves. When setbacks happen, they interpret them as proof that they were right all along. And because their actions are shaped by that belief, their results often reinforce it. The belief creates the behavior. The behavior creates the outcome. The outcome strengthens the belief, and the cycle continues. Now imagine another person facing the exact same circumstances, but this person believes growth is possible. They believe skills can be developed. They believe challenges are opportunities to improve. The obstacles remain the same. The environment remains the same. But the belief system is completely different. As a result, their actions become different. Their persistence becomes different. Their confidence becomes different. And eventually, their reality becomes different. This is not magic. It is psychology. The subconscious mind is constantly working beneath conscious awareness. It stores patterns, assumptions, memories, and beliefs collected throughout life. Many of these beliefs were formed years ago through experiences, education, family influences,
And social conditioning. The fascinating part is that most
people never question them. They simply accept them as truth. They say things like, "I'm not creative. I'm not a leader. I'm not good with people. I always fail. This is just who I am." But these statements are rarely objective facts. They are often beliefs that have been repeated so many times they feel real. And once a belief feels real, the mind starts organizing reality around it. The brain becomes extremely good at finding evidence that supports existing beliefs. It notices information that confirms them and often ignores information that contradicts them. This means, too, people can experience the same event and draw completely different conclusions. One sees proof of possibility. The other sees proof of limitation, not because reality changed, but because their beliefs interpreted it differently. This is why changing beliefs can feel like changing reality itself. When a limiting belief is replaced, new possibilities suddenly appear. Opportunities that once seemed invisible become obvious. Actions that once felt impossible begin feeling achievable. The external world may remain exactly the same, but the internal operating system has changed. And once the operating system changes, behavior changes. When behavior changes, results change. And when results change, life begins moving in a new direction. Many of the greatest transformations in human history started with a change in belief. Someone believed something was possible before evidence existed. Someone refused to accept the limitations that others considered permanent. Because every achievement begins as a belief before it becomes a reality. The most important thing to understand is that beliefs are not always truths. They are often stories. Stories, repeated until they feel permanent, but stories can be rewritten. Mental programs can be updated, and invisible limitations can be removed. The moment a person becomes aware of the beliefs controlling their life, they gain the power to question them. And the moment they question them, they create the possibility of replacing them. Because the boundaries of your world are often not defined by reality itself, but by what you have been conditioned to believe about reality. And the moment you realize that your beliefs are not merely describing your life, but actively shaping it, you stop treating them as unquestionable truths and begin consciously choosing the beliefs that expand your potential instead of limiting your future. If beliefs are the internal programs that shape how we interpret reality, then emotions are the fuel that powers those programs. And this is where the conversation becomes even more fascinating, because most people believe they make decisions logically. They believe they carefully analyze situations, weigh the facts, and then choose the best path forward. But science has repeatedly shown something surprising. Emotions often influence decisions long before logic gets involved. In fact, many of the choices people consider rational are actually emotional decisions that are later justified with logic. Think about it. How many times has fear stopped someone from taking an opportunity? How many times has confidence helped someone succeed before they had proof they could? How many relationships have been built, strengthened, damaged, or destroyed because of emotions? How many careers have changed because someone felt inspired, discouraged, motivated, or uncertain? The answer is countless. Because emotions are not just feelings. They are powerful signals that influence perception, attention, memory, and behavior. And when emotions change, reality often appears to change with them. Imagine waking up feeling excited, energized, and optimistic. The world immediately looks different. Challenges seem manageable. People seem friendlier. Opportunities seem easier to spot. Your confidence increases. Your willingness to act expands. Now imagine waking up overwhelmed, anxious, and discouraged. The same world suddenly feels heavier. The same challenges seem larger. The same opportunities become harder to notice. The same future appears less promising. What changed? Not necessarily reality. Your emotional state changed. And because your emotional state changed, your perception changed. This is one of the most important ways the mind bends reality. Emotions act like filters. They color everything you experience. When fear dominates the mind, attention naturally focuses on threats. The brain begins scanning for danger. It searches for what could go wrong. It magnifies uncertainty. As a result, reality begins appearing more threatening than it may actually be. When confidence dominates the mind, attention shifts. The brain begins scanning for opportunities. It notices possibilities. It sees pathways forward, and reality begins appearing more open and manageable. Again, this does not mean emotions magically alter the external world. It means emotions alter how you experience the world, and how you experience the world influences the actions you take. This creates a powerful cycle. Emotion influences perception. Perception influences behavior. Behavior influences results. Results reinforce future emotions. And before long, an emotional pattern becomes a life pattern. This is why people living in similar circumstances can create completely different futures. One person's fear leads to hesitation. Another person's confidence leads to action. One person's anxiety causes avoidance. Another person's determination creates persistence. The environment may be identical. The emotional state is not. And that difference changes everything. Scientists have also discovered that emotions affect memory and attention. When you are emotionally charged, your brain gives special importance to certain experiences. It remembers them more vividly. It notices similar situations more easily in the future. This means emotions literally influence what information becomes important inside your mind. The emotional state you repeatedly live in becomes a lens through which you interpret life. This is why mastering emotions is not about suppressing them. It is about understanding them, observing them, learning from them, and refusing to let temporary emotions permanently control your decisions. Because emotions are powerful servants but dangerous masters. They provide valuable information, but they should not be allowed to dictate every action. The strongest minds are not emotionless. They are emotionally aware. They recognize fear without surrendering to it. They experience doubt without becoming controlled by it. They feel uncertainty without allowing it to define their future. And because of this, they are able to shape their reality more consciously. The truth is that your emotional state is influencing your life far more than most people realize. It affects how you see challenges, opportunities, relationships, risks, and possibilities. And the moment you realize that emotions are not merely reactions to reality, but powerful forces that shape how reality is experienced, you stop becoming a prisoner of temporary feelings and begin using emotional awareness as a tool to consciously create a stronger, clearer, and more empowered future. As we move deeper into understanding how the mind shapes reality, we arrive at one of the most fascinating discoveries in modern neuroscience. It is a discovery that sounds almost unbelievable at first, Yet study after study continues to support it. Your brain often responds to vividly imagined experiences in ways that are remarkably similar to real experiences. Think about that. The mind does not always draw a sharp line between something physically experienced and something deeply rehearsed in imagination. When a person vividly visualizes an action, many of the same neural pathways associated with performing that action begin activating. This is why visualization has become such a powerful tool among athletes, performers, entrepreneurs, and high achievers. They understand something most people overlook. The brain learns from repetition, and that repetition does not always have to be physical. Imagine a professional athlete preparing for an important competition. Before stepping onto the field, they often spend hours mentally rehearsing success. They imagine every movement, every decision, every response, every victory. To an outside observer, it may appear that nothing is happening, but inside the brain, something extraordinary is taking place. Neural pathways are being strengthened. Patterns are being reinforced. Confidence is being developed. The mind is preparing itself for future performance, and when the real moment arrives, it feels more familiar because the brain has already experienced it countless times internally. This principle extends far beyond sports. Every person is constantly using visualization whether they realize it or not. The problem is that many people visualize failure instead of success. They imagine what could go wrong. They rehearse embarrassment. They mentally replay fears. They picture rejection. They repeatedly experience negative scenarios inside their minds. And because the brain learns from repetition, those mental images begin influencing emotions, expectations, and behavior. In other words, the imagination becomes a training ground. The question is, what are you training for? Success or failure? Growth or limitation? Confidence or fear? Most people never ask themselves this question, yet their minds are rehearsing something every single day. The brain is constantly adapting to what it experiences repeatedly. This concept is known as neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. What you repeatedly think about influences how your brain is wired. What you repeatedly imagine influences what feels familiar. What feels familiar influences behavior, and behavior influences results. This is why visualization is not about wishing. It is not about magical thinking. It is not about pretending reality does not exist. It is about preparing the mind to recognize and act upon possibilities that align with your goals. When you repeatedly visualize confidence, your brain becomes more comfortable with confidence. When you repeatedly visualize success, your brain becomes more familiar with success. When you repeatedly visualize growth, your brain begins adapting to growth. The future you imagine begins influencing the person you become today. Of course, visualization alone is not enough. Action remains essential. A person cannot simply imagine success and expect reality to transform automatically. But visualization changes something equally important. It changes identity. It changes expectations. It changes the way you approach challenges. Because people naturally move toward what feels familiar, and when success becomes mentally familiar, taking action toward it becomes easier. This is why the world's highest performers often spend enormous amounts of time training their minds before they train their circumstances. They understand that every reality is created twice, first in the mind, then in the physical world. The blueprint always comes before the building. The vision comes before the achievement. The mental rehearsal comes before the performance. And the fascinating truth is that your brain is listening to these rehearsals every single day, whether you are aware of it or not, whether they are positive or negative, whether they are helping you or limiting you. And the moment you realize that your imagination is not merely escaping reality, but actively preparing your brain for future experiences, you stop rehearsing fear, doubt, and limitation and begin consciously training your mind to recognize, pursue, and create the reality you truly want to live. As we reach the final piece of this puzzle, everything begins to come together. We have explored how the brain constructs reality, how attention shapes perception, how beliefs influence possibilities, how emotions affect decisions, and how visualization prepares the mind for future experiences. Now we arrive at the most important realization of all. The reality you live tomorrow begins with the thoughts you choose today. This does not mean your thoughts magically control the universe. It does not mean every challenge disappears if you think positively. And it does not mean reality bends to your wishes. The truth is much more powerful than that. Your thoughts influence the lens through which you experience reality. That lens influences your decisions. Your decisions influence your actions. Your actions influence your habits. Your habits influence your future. And over time, that future becomes your reality. Most people underestimate the power of this process because it happens gradually. They expect change to be dramatic. They expect transformation to happen overnight. But the mind rarely works that way. The greatest changes often begin invisibly. A new thought appears, a new belief forms, a new perspective develops, a new decision is made. And from that moment forward, a different future begins unfolding. Imagine standing at the edge of a massive forest. A tiny shift in direction may seem insignificant at first. Move 1 degree to the left or 1 degree to the right, and the difference appears almost invisible. But continue walking for miles, and those paths lead to completely different destinations. The same principle applies to thinking. Small thoughts become repeated thoughts. Repeated thoughts become beliefs. Beliefs become behaviors. Behaviors become identity, and identity shapes destiny. This is why every major transformation begins internally before it becomes visible externally. People often look at successful individuals and focus on the final result. They see achievements, accomplishments, confidence, and influence. What they rarely see is the mental transformation that happened first. Before the success existed externally, it existed internally. Before the achievement became visible, a different way of thinking had already taken root. Because every external reality is preceded by an internal one. The mind always leads. Reality follows. This is why awareness is so important. Most people allow thoughts to enter their minds without questioning them. They repeat limiting stories. They reinforce fears. They focus on problems more than possibilities. And because they do this consistently, their lives begin reflecting those patterns. Not because reality is against them, but because their minds are directing their attention, emotions, beliefs, and actions toward a particular outcome. The opposite is also true. When a person consciously chooses empowering thoughts, everything begins changing. They notice different opportunities. They develop different emotional responses. They build different habits. They make different decisions. And eventually they create different results. The process is not instant, but it is powerful. Think about every invention, every breakthrough, every achievement, every movement that changed history. Every one of them began as a thought. Before it became reality, it existed in someone's mind. Someone imagined it, someone believed it, someone acted upon it, and eventually, reality caught up with the vision. That same principle operates in your life every day. The future version of yourself is being built right now through the thoughts you consistently entertain. Your habits are being shaped. Your identity is being formed. Your direction is being chosen, even when you are unaware of it. The question is not whether your mind is influencing your future. The question is whether you are doing it consciously or unconsciously. Because the truth science continues to reveal is not that the mind possesses magical powers. The truth is that the mind possesses transformative powers. Powers that influence perception. Powers that influence behavior. Powers that influence opportunity. Powers that influence reality through the choices they create. And the moment you realize that every thought is quietly shaping the person you are becoming, stop allowing your mind to operate on autopilot and begin consciously choosing the beliefs, focus, emotions, and actions that align with your highest potential. Is the moment you stop reacting to reality and start becoming the architect of the future you truly want to create. Most people will spend their entire lives waiting for the world to change. The few who transform their lives discover a different truth. When you change the mind that sees reality, reality itself begins to change. So stop waiting for a better future. and become the person capable of creating one.